Hello everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. We're here today to honour the incredible 77,000 people who've signed our open letter to the UK government. A letter demanding that post-Brexit food imports must meet British standards of animal welfare, food safety and environmental protection. To every single person who added their name, thank you. At this pivotal moment in UK history, you're sending a clear message to the government. Through Brexit and beyond, the UK must not agree trade deals that undermine our animal welfare standards. During this broadcast, you'll see a roll call of signatures appearing on screen, just another reminder of the sheer scale of support for this campaign. Many of you have been taking to Twitter today to send your messages to the UK government. If you're on Twitter and want to join in, please do. You'll find a template tweet on our Twitter page, that's @CIWF. We're going to hear from a broad group of people today, from compassion volunteers to MPs, all of whom have backed this campaign. Our political speakers include Shadow Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, Luke Pollard, Deirdre Brock, SNP spokesperson for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, Green Party MP Caroline Lucas, and Tim Farron, the Liberal Democrat Environment, Food and Rural Affairs spokesperson. We'll also hear inspiring words from two of our wonderful volunteers, Sophie Nuns, one of our Brighton volunteers, and Helen Palmer, a Compassion in Berkshire volunteer. Plus, TV vet and much-loved Compassion supporter Emma Milne will also be sharing her thoughts with us. And later on, I'll be chatting to Compassion's Chief Policy Advisor, Peter Stevenson, about what lies ahead for our campaign to protect animals in UK trade deals. Without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker, Luke Pollard, Shadow Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs.
Hello, my name's Luke Pollard. I'm the Shadow Environment Secretary. As a country, we stand at a crossroads. Our departure from the European Union earlier this year means that we have a choice about what type of country we want to be and where we are headed. I want Britain to be a beacon country that has high animal welfare, high environmental standards, and is loud and proud about having those standards adhered to in the UK and sharing those standards globally. That's why Labour has been focused on improving the agriculture bill to ensure that our British farmers aren't undercut by any food produced to lower standards, lower animal welfare, lower environmental standards abroad. I really worry that many of our farmers may be put out of business by trade deals signed by the government that would allow food produced lower standards into our country. We know that it wouldn't be in the supermarkets where that food would first appear. It would be in food service, in cafes and restaurants. That would undermine the 50% of our agricultural production that goes into food service, helping push more of our farmers out of business. We've fought long and hard as a country to improve our animal welfare in farming. There's lots more to do, of course, but having high standards at home while turning a blind eye to poorer standards abroad means that we are exporting responsibility for the food we eat. Frankly, we haven't spent enough time as a country focused on food policy, not only in terms of decarbonising our food supply system, not only in terms of looking at the welfare of animals in that system, not only in terms of looking at the welfare of people that work in food, be that on the fields, on the land, or in our food factories. That's why Labour's spending more time focusing on this area. And that's why it's been so important getting support from organisations like yourselves to keep the pressure on for higher standards, to make sure that we're not allowing backdoors via any trade deals to lower standards, to make sure that the food we eat is of a decent quality, that has been produced to decent standards, that's had a focus on decarbonisation and making sure it's healthy. There's a lot of work to do. We didn't get the changes we wanted to the agriculture bill, but that fight will continue with the trade bill. The improvements in parliamentary scrutiny are welcome, although they're far too late and they should have been a starting point, not the end point for the government. We'll again keep pressing on that, because at the moment I worry that if there's a bad trade deal signed by the government, the measures that we have in place at the moment are not enough to stop it. And that's why the campaign will continue. Thanks very much for your support so far. Keep fighting on this, because it matters. Thank you.
A big thank you to Luke Pollard there for sharing a really comprehensive overview of the situation and for supporting our ongoing fight for farm animals. Now a message from one of our much loved high profile supporters, TV vet Emma Milne.
Hello, my name's Emma Milne and I've been a vet for almost 25 years and a keen animal welfare campaigner as well during that time. I work fairly often with Compassion in World Farming. I love the work they do because, like many vets, I'm not a vegetarian, and the welfare of the animals that I eat and the animal products that I buy is very important to me. I was very, very happy to sign Compassion's letter about trade deals, and I'm very happy to see that so many others have as well. I think whatever your feelings about Brexit, personally, I'm totally opposed to it. But I think if we can find one silver lining amongst that, it's that we've got a real opportunity to raise our animal welfare standards. The UK often puts itself forward as a country that's world leading when it comes to welfare, which you can debate, but we are up there, and the European standards are certainly very high. I think for me, my big fear is that when we leave the European Union, that if we enter into trade deals with countries like the United States and others that have welfare standards that are lower than ours, this is potentially a massive backward step. And I don't think that many people realise that that will have a huge impact on the lives and welfare of millions of animals around the world. For me, yes, of course, I'm concerned about things in other countries like growth promoters and hormones, milk production promoters that end up in the food chain and possibly affecting human health. But for me as well, the very big worry is the husbandry systems and the welfare of the animals throughout their lives themselves, which could change and will change for the meat and animals that we import. Things like battery cages that have been banned here for some time, things like for animals that are as intelligent as pigs, the use of farrowing crates and stalls where sows are tethered or kept in stalls where for large periods of time they can't even turn around. And for me, to go back to that would be a travesty, a real travesty. So what would my message be to the people of the UK is to urge your MPs to keep our welfare standards as good as they are and to not enter into trade deals with countries that are lower than ours. And my message to the UK government would be, don't take a backward step. Don't just try and stay as strong as we are now, but let's try and be better.
A big thanks to Emma Milne for joining us and sharing her pressing concerns about the potential impact of UK trade deals on animal welfare after Brexit. On to our next speaker, Deirdre Brock MP, SNP spokesperson for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs.
Hello, I'm Deirdre Brock. I'm MP for Edinburgh North and Leith and spokesperson for the SNP for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. And I have to say I am wholly unconvinced by the UK government's assurances that they will protect food, animal welfare and environmental standards in the trade deals that they have to strike after Brexit. So yes, the vociferous objections of so many agricultural, animal welfare and environmental groups were enough to finally force ministers into proposing the setting up of the Trade and Agriculture Commission. But that won't make any sort of real difference if trade negotiators decide, in the face of aggressive lobbying from, say, US agricultural interests, that slackening the rules around ractopamine-injected pork or permissible levels of insecticide or antibiotics or intensive factory farming of livestock will, after all, be an acceptable compromise. The government has said that the food standards agencies will ensure that food imports comply with our standards, but I have to ask how? Will they have teams inspecting the production chains in other countries as the EU does? How will the animal husbandry and production standards of other nations be monitored to prevent unsuitable food ending up on our plates? In Scotland, the UK government's internal market bill, if passed, means that we will be forced to accept goods produced to lower animal welfare, food or environmental standards if another part of the UK decides that it's acceptable. So if Westminster, acting in its capacity as England's Parliament, decides that certain imported goods are acceptable, then the devolved nations, even though we might disagree, will just have to suck it up. Our Scottish producers, who have spent many long years building Scotland's reputation for quality produce, will be undercut by the cheaper production methods, and their businesses will suffer the fallout. Now, forgive me if I sound angry, but it is because I am. The government failed to listen to anyone on the agricultural bill. Now, I would urge ministers to listen now. We need written into the trade bill a guarantee that our food markets cannot and will not be opened up to genetically modified crops, racked open mean pork, low quality baby food, meat pumped full of antibiotics and steroids, produced in conditions that we would find totally unacceptable in the UK. The quality and safety of the food on our plates is too important for any poverty of ambition, of thought, or of governance.
Thank you to Deirdre Brock for such an impassioned message, highlighting just how much is at stake here for people and animals. Let's hear a few words now from Tim Farron, Liberal Democrat spokesperson for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs.
Now that the UK government is embarking upon trade deals with other countries, the issue of what the minimum animal welfare standards applied in those countries are becomes really important. It becomes really important because, generally speaking, poor quality standards, lower welfare standards are cheaper. And that means countries with poor standards, whose goods we import into the UK, have an unfair advantage over our farmers here. But it's also concerning because we care about animal welfare. British animal welfare standards are amongst the highest in the world. They're the highest because we're part of a family of nations within Europe that over the last 40 odd years have developed standards in regulation that keeps welfare high. But also, look, we're British. We love our animals as a cultural thing. There's also, when it comes to farming, the fact that our farms tend to be family farms. In other words, the ratio between animals and human beings isn't absolutely vast compared to the ranch farming you find in other parts of the world, including, of course, the United States. And that means we have better animal welfare standards, without a shadow of a doubt, than most of the countries we'll be doing deals with. And that is why the government has to, although it's so far refused to, write minimum animal welfare standards on imports into the UK into any given trade deal. If we don't do that, then we are giving away control, not taking it back, and we're also undermining our farmers and those animal welfare standards that we are so proud of as British people.
Thank you to Tim Farron for outlining the threats that animals and British farmers could face in future UK trade deals. I'm now very proud to introduce two of our dedicated volunteers, starting with Sophie Nuns, a Compassion in Brighton volunteer.
I'm Sophie Nuns, and I have been a supporter of Compassion in Wild Farming for around 15 years. During that time, I have seen Compassion act as a voice for farm animals, not only in the UK, but also abroad. I have seen them lobby governments and help to create legislation to improve animal welfare standards. I have signed this letter as I am concerned that free trade agreements due to Brexit may undo years of hard work and progress, but they don't have to. I am calling on the government to live up to the promise in their manifesto not to compromise the environment, animal welfare or food standards through any trade deals. We can and should use these trade deals to set the bar high for animal welfare, not to lower our own. The UK must not import animal cruelty.
A big thank you to Sophie Nuns for supporting Compassion through the years and for sharing such a moving message with us. Now let's hear from another of our wonderful volunteers, Helen Palmer from Compassion in Berkshire.
I'm Helen. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my friends and my family members, and this is what we want to tell the government. We want to eat well and to be healthy. We want more information on food packaging, not less. We want better animal welfare, not worse. We want stronger environmental regulations, less chemicals in our food, and a decrease in child obesity. We love and value our small farmers, and we want to protect them from ruin. Many EU environmental and animal welfare regulations are there because the UK helped to fight for them. It was us who pushed to get animals recognised in EU law as sentient beings. Why would we want to remove that recognition from our own laws? The way forwards is not backwards. We don't want to eat pork from sow stalls when this nation banned these 21 years ago on grounds of cruelty. We don't want to eat 72 pesticides, which have been banned by the EU on safety grounds. We don't want GM. We don't want these things sneaked into school dinners, canteens, care homes and ready meals. We don't want them at all. Government, do your job and protect standards.
A huge thanks to Helen Palmer for standing with Compassion for decades and for sharing such heartfelt words with us. We move on now to our final political speaker, Green Party MP Caroline Lucas.
It is vital that animal welfare standards are protected in law and are not undercut by the import of products with lower standards from other countries. Countries like the US, for example, where animal welfare issues include hormone-treated beef and pigs kept in sow stalls, which have been illegal in the UK since 1999. Now, there is widespread public concern about this issue, with petitions gaining millions of signatures. And Compassion in World Farming's open letter to the Prime Minister has now been signed by an incredible 50,000 supporters. Ministers have repeatedly said that standards will be protected after Brexit, and the Conservative manifesto included a pledge to safeguard high animal welfare standards. But simultaneously, they've refused to guarantee that in law. And quite frankly, words are not enough, and we need to do far more to reassure our farmers. Now, when the Agriculture Bill was passing through Parliament, the government instructed their MPs to vote against amendments, including those passed by the House of Lords, which would have protected our standards. Now, sadly, this bill has now become law. Attention, though, now turns to the Trade Bill, which is passing through the House of Lords right now. This bill is our last chance to protect our standards in law. And it also gives an opportunity for Parliament to have oversight and a vote on trade agreements. I have repeatedly criticised the trade bill's lack of transparency and have supported amendments to improve parliamentary scrutiny of trade deals. Shockingly, at report stage, Conservative MPs voted to give themselves less influence over trade deals than their counterparts in the EU or in the US. So the campaign to protect the UK's standards has galvanised public concern and brought together a vast range of voices, from farmers to environmental organisations. And I want to thank everyone who has helped to keep up the pressure and to bring this campaign to life, including Compassion in World Farming supporters. It's now for the government to bring forward amendments to the trade bill to protect our precious standards in law and to give Parliament a real say on future trade deals.
Thank you to Caroline for that supportive message, really emphasising the urgent need to prevent low welfare imports. I'm now joined by Compassion's Chief Policy Advisor, Peter Stevenson.
Hi.
Peter, hello.
Hello, Natasha.
Hello, thanks so much for joining us.
It's great to be here, and it's been really heartwarming to hear all those messages of support, because we really do have some problems. Just last week, the government published its agricultural transition paper, and some of it is really good. They're making it pretty clear they'd like to phase out farrowing crates and enriched cages and indeed mutilation such as beak trimming, that they want all animals to have access to enrichment materials, to be able to engage in their natural behaviours. But it's going to be very hard to achieve this if at the same time the UK is striking trade deals that allow, cheap, cruelty-laden meat, dairy and eggs to come into the UK. Our farmers won't be able to cope with having to raise their own standards while at the same time having to cope with low welfare imports.
Absolutely. And what are some of your specific concerns about trade deals in the year ahead?
Well, obviously the most worrying overall aspect is that, time and again, the government has refused to include in law a requirement that the UK cannot conclude a trade deal unless that deal includes a clause that allows the UK to require imports to meet our welfare standards. But the big worry coming up is the trade deal with the US. This isn't just about hormone-treated beef and chlorine-washed chicken. Virtually every livestock sector in the US has much lower standards than the UK. For example, most US beef cattle are reared for the last few months of their life in feedlots. So thousands of cattle are crammed into a barren, overcrowded area. There's no grass, just bare soil. So when it rains, the conditions become very, very muddy. The animals can get dirty. Our pasture-based beef farmers won't be able to compete with imports of hormone-injected feedlot fattened beef from the US. We have a similar problem with eggs. Most US hens are kept in battery cages. Now, I don't expect fresh eggs to be coming across the Atlantic from the US to the UK, but what we could see is egg powder coming across. That's what's used as an ingredient in cakes, biscuits, quiches, ready meals, pasta. Now, about a fifth of all eggs in the UK are used in this way as ingredients in other foods. And the US egg powder will be much cheaper than our own because it's coming from battery hens. So about a fifth of our egg sector is going to be at risk. Similarly with pork. Most US sows are kept in sow stalls, and the US pig sector often uses ractopamine. This is a beta agonist growth promoter. Our farmers won't be able to compete with pork imports from herds using sow stalls and ractopamine. So the deal with the US is going to be the big worry, and our government is not being totally straightforward. They keep saying, no, we won't let chlorine-washed chicken and hormone-treated beef in, but they must know the problem is much, much wider than just that.
So some really major concerns there. What about the trade bill? How could that affect farm animals?
Well, if at this 11th hour, the government would have to change of heart and say, okay, we will put something in the trade bill that means we can't strike deals that allow low welfare imports in, that would be great. But there's no sign that they're willing to do that, despite all our pressure. And indeed, we've recently concluded a trade bill with Japan. Now, I don't think we import much meat and dairy from Japan. Nonetheless, there is nothing in that agreement that would protect British farmers. And really worrying is the very short half-page section on animal welfare. It's couched in very broad terms, does a little more than saying, well, maybe at some future point, the UK and Japan will talk about animal welfare. Now, if this is going to be the government's approach to animal welfare in future trade deals, like the one with the US, then our welfare standards and our farmers are going to be in real deep trouble. But of course, we are going to continue to campaign whatever happens in the trade bill. We will be watching each trade bill as it's negotiated and really ourselves and asking our supporters to put huge pressure on the government to not allow low welfare food to come into the UK.
Thank you so much, Peter, for those valuable insights into what lies ahead and what we need to keep doing to protect farm animals.
Thank you.
So we've heard today from a wide variety of speakers who all have one thing in common: the determination to protect British animal welfare, environmental and food safety standards, come what may. A huge thank you to all of you for watching, and to the amazing 77,000 people who signed our open letter. That, of course, includes high-profile supporters like Emma Milne, who we've heard from today, fellow vets Mark Abraham and James Greenwood, actors Mike Beckingham and Emma Kennedy, and Compassion patrons Jerome Flynn and Deborah Meaden. All your signatures will now be submitted to the UK government, and your voices for animals will be heard. Our campaign will, of course, continue, so please do stay with us as we keep fighting for farm animals through Brexit and beyond. Thank you. Goodbye.